what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to the Winning Drive. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, young prodigy C.J. Vogel, and our own coach, former high school football coach at Bernie Capel, Brownwood, Belt Road 10. Also played college football at Abilene Christian, coach there as well, and was on the staff at the University of Texas for multiple head coaches. It's our own coach. Oh, these days you can catch his work, boom, right there. See that? ShipleyRanches.com. That's our coach, Bob Shipley. What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
Hey, doing good. Just, kind of a little cooler weather out here in the big country. Little rain here and there. At least it's not. Yeah, at least it's not 100 plus. But
we thankful for it. Yeah, I would say it rained here and now you got overcast. I'm thankful for it. It's nice outside. I actually went out and ran in the rain today. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Get a little workout in the rain. That's cool. All right. You guys, hope you guys are staying cool. Hope you guys, thank you guys for joining us, no matter where you're joining us from. And I hope you guys are excited about the latest commitment for the Longhorns in their 2026 class, Kosi Akpala. We'll talk about that coming up. We'll start the show with that conversation. If you missed the conversation that he had, the latest commitment for the Longhorns in the 2026 class with Bobby Burton, and our own Jeff Howe right here on the channel. I encourage you to go check that out. It was really good. I was actually in the process of checking out. I'm going to finish it up right after we're done. Apparently they had the head coach for Maid Creek on after they had Kosi Akpala on and some other special guests. So a really good show with those guys. So go check that out if you want to hear from the latest commitment in the 2026 class. But we'll talk about it coming up here momentarily. We also got some other topics we'll get into. Jim Nagy, the newest GM in college football and for the Oklahoma Sooners, he actually had some interesting insight into his roster construction philosophy and building the Sooners in the current landscape of revenue sharing and NIL and the transfer portal. And I thought it may be something, if it works out, it may be a great way to find value in this current landscape of college sports. So we'll talk about that coming up a little bit. We'll also get into comments from Greg McElroy. Speaking of the Sooners, he had some really, I think some extremely complimentary things to say about their new quarterback, John Mateer. We'll talk about that coming up. There is a lot of preseason award watch lists. The Walter Camp gave the Longhorns a lot of love. There's also the Athlon Sports preseason recognition. Their preseason All-American list is out, and the Longhorns are well recognized and well represented there. So we'll talk about that coming up a little bit later on the show. And Pro Football Focus continues their top 50 ranking of all the players in college football, and I believe they have yet to unveil the top 10, but they revealed 50 through 11, and we'll talk about where the Longhorns are ranked so far in their rankings. So we'll get into all that, but of course, you drive the show any direction you want to. Questions, comments, throw them out there. We'll try to address as many of them as we can. Super chats jump to the front of the line, and you can interrupt the show at any time. Just throw out a super chat. All right, gentlemen, let's start with the big news, the good news for the Longhorns. A little recruiting momentum now on the trail. The latest commitment in the 2026 class, I believe it's how many now, CJ? Is it 16 total commitments now in that class? Kosi Akpala, the linebacker, edge defender out of Houston, Maid Creek, Katie there. And I know the program actually really well. I know the area really well, being from H-Town there. But he is a really fascinating defender because a lot of people have him projected to play a lot of different things. I'm not sure they know what his body's going to grow into, but he's got a lot of upside and a ton of really high-level traits as a defender.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, 6'2.5", 225 in that 230 range. You see it off the edge. Look, he's the guy that was used very often at Maid Creek to get after the quarterback. You see him off the edge pretty often in this tape. He's elusive. He knows how to slip through blocks. He knows how to use his hands to escape blocks and disengage off of blocks. But ultimately, a guy over the last 2 years with 32 tackles for a loss. This is a guy that knows how to be disruptive and create negative plays for a defense. I think that's something that will be certainly utilized during his time in Austin. What's going to be really interesting, though, is how does this linebacking class fill out? Because I think there's more to his game than just coming down and making plays behind the line of scrimmage. Of course, that is certainly valuable. We've seen it with Anthony Hill during his time in Austin, but what can he do in pass coverage? What can he do when not necessarily pinning his ears back and getting after the quarterback? I think this is a guy that fits right in that will linebacker conversation. I think a Leon LaFowl clone is kind of right where you envision him long-term, but ultimately the upside of him coming after the quarterback, plus those measurables at 6'2.5", 230, man, the tape is exciting, and he's a heck of a prospect. That's a great get for the Longhorns in this one.
Coach, what are your thoughts about I know you got a chance to watch some of his film. What are your thoughts? Where would you play him, and what kind of player do you think he is?
Well, I think, once again, I sound like a broken record, but I think he's a very versatile player. I think he fits into, the type of player that we see Sark recruiting over and over again. I think he might eventually be able to grow in. Maybe it's because he wears number 11. I don't know, but I see a little smaller version of Colin Simmons in the guy, and it might just be because I'm looking at this 11, although he's wearing green. But you see a lot of similarities. He's so quick. He understands leverage. He takes great angles. You can see him when he's chasing the guy down, especially a quarterback. He hacks. He hacks to try to get the ball out. He strips the ball out. He just seems to be a great all-around player. One play, he runs down a running back, in the open field after about a 30 or 40-yard gain. I think he brings a lot of versatility, a guy that you can drop into coverage, a guy that you can play at outside backer, a guy you can bring down a line of scrimmage as he gets a little more physically mature to be able to take on the big linemen and the running backs. But I'm very excited about this guy. He's a great player, and I think, here he is running down. He doesn't just run. He swallows him up pretty fast, and that's a 6'8" running back he's running down, and those guys aren't slowpokes. So I think he brings a lot of athleticism, a lot of versatility, and he's got a motor. He's always making plays. I know we're watching highlights. You go back and watch some raw plays. He doesn't take plays off, and that's the kind of guy I love to see.
Yep. You guys broke down his skill set. It's one that's a very versatile one, and he's got some elite traits that could really translate to being a linebacker, as an outside linebacker, wheel linebacker, or even being a guy at times that can help you as one of those edge defenders that Texas is starting to. I think they're starting to stockpile some of those guys, the guys who can be linebackers off ball, but also come down and defend the edge if necessary, and give you an added bonus as a pass rusher. But what I love the story Jerry Hamilton told about this, his commitment. And there's a great graphic up on the On Texas Football Twitter account that has the quote up there. But he said that Kosi showed up for his announcement. He was the first person there and put all the tables together and brought in the chairs by himself. There's a certain mentality with that, coach. I don't know how often I don't know if I did that for my announcement. I don't know if I did that. I believe that stuff was already there set up for me. But just show you there's a blue collar mentality that the young man has. Also, Jerry brought up that and I see Alan there brings it up in the chat, film junkie. And he brought it up also in the interview that he had with Bobby and Jeff. I would encourage you to go check that out. That loves watching film, hates going into a game where he feels like he's not prepared. So there's almost this element of, hey, let me over prepare. Let me have too much information available potentially, because I don't want to go into a game not knowing what to do in a certain situation or not having enough information available to me in that situation or circumstance. I thought that was great. Someone said, sounds like a Roshan type of leader. There's certainly, aside from the physical freakish traits, there's certainly some football character elements. I'm hearing more about the young man after listening to the interview as well that I like about him. Fast and violent, I believe, is the way he described his game. Fast and violent.
That's what you like to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Fast and violent, said, and to your point, coach, by not taking plays off, said, his mom instilled a good work ethic in him. You got to work. That's why he's breaking out the chairs for the announcement. So I like to pick up. I love the skill set, though, but I think there is something to be said. Sark is adding, to Coach's point, multi-dimensional defenders now. They just have a lot of elements to their game. Very few of these guys they're bringing in are just guys who are playing specific roles. These are guys I think specific. They're bringing in so that they can potentially have that multiplicity that we've been talking about. I think that's the next phase for the defense anyway. So 6'2", 230. I love it. It's a good pickup. All right.
Yeah,
Is it all right? So is this momentum? All right, we're gonna get to momentum going here. How about this one from Josh? He says, "F it, let's do the Ojo conversation." All right, so he's already moving on. He doesn't even want to celebrate the Kosi Akpala announcement and commitment yet. He's like, "Hey, I'm done celebrating that. Let's move on. When is the next one?" I guess that's what a lot of Longhorn fans are thinking.
Yeah, so tomorrow will be the decisions between Felix Ojo and John Turntine. Of course, we still believe Texas and John Turntine are trending in the right direction there. No new developments on the sense of Turntine, but Ojo's a little bit different, right? And I think you're starting to maybe get to grips with Texas not having the highest offer for Felix Ojo. And I know that he mentioned Texas and Ohio State were kind of leading the pace in his recruitment. That was about 2 weeks ago. We know things can change quite a while in 2 weeks in the current age of recruiting. Does that mean Texas is completely out of it for a Felix Ojo? No, not at all. But I would be very surprised if we came down to decision time and Texas had the highest offer for Felix Ojo. I think Texas Tech is heavily pursuing. I think Utah, even after landing one of the top offensive tackles in the entire country, is very much in this one. Of course, they hosted Felix Ojo, June 20th for that official visit out there in Utah. And Ohio State still on the fritz. They're in this conversation. They're a good program. He's going to take them seriously. But I think you're getting to a point now where folks in his corner are saying, rack up as much as you can while you can. Because while a 5-star right now, I think there's a long way to go before what you see on the field matches that rating. And that might not end up coming yet. If folks are going to go pay a premium for the rating at the moment, it would be smart in my eyes to take what's on the table. And I don't believe Texas has the highest offer for Felix Ojo, but they've won those decisions in recruitments elsewhere in which they came from behind and necessarily didn't have the highest offer at the time. So we'll see, but I would be perhaps a little surprised given the fact that Texas is perhaps trailing a little bit here if this one ended up not going the Longhorns' way.
Yeah. Texas believes that, yes, they have competitive offers, of course, competitive rates, whatever you want to call it, with NIL. But I think they believe they have more added value and kind of perks. And they try to sell that almost as, hey, man, this is added value of Texas, the alumni base, the education, the academics, living in Austin as opposed to living in wherever you're living, as opposed to Austin. If it's not a major metropolitan city, they sell the draft, right? Development, future earnings, as opposed to getting the money right now, the instant gratification. They sell a lot of that stuff too. Now you could say, hell, sell that and make the biggest offer. You can, but like I said, I do think Texas, they don't, at least Sark, I don't believe he wants to lead with the money. I think he wants to try to get the guys here for, yes, they will be compensated with NIL, but he wants to have them here he wants them to want to be here for different reasons. I want to be at Texas for different reasons other than they offered the biggest bag. Sometimes I'm sure that is it. But the Arch Manning example is kind of the shining example, right? It's like, Arch Manning got a lot of money too, so I guess it doesn't necessarily apply for if you need money. And if it's generational wealth, and we're talking about a program offering you damn near double what Texas was offering, then trust me, I get it. I'm not judging anybody for that. But ultimately, the Arch Manning story was that he wanted to go to Texas for a long time. And even Cooper Manning has said it now, like, no, he was always fascinated with Texas, infatuated with the program and having his own legacy, and not saying, of course, his reasons need to be the reasons for other guys, but he had reasons other than, I'm just going to go to the highest bidder. And I think for a lot of the guys, I think that would be the case for a lot of the guys that Texas has brought in. If they had other reasons other than the biggest dollar figure being offered.
CJ, is Texas Tech a real threat here for Ojo?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a number
So
that was
academics don't apparently don't matter much anymore.
in today's day and age, Coach.
You know what they say: get your grades up or get your guns up. You know.
That's right.
But if Texas Tech is offering, like I said, generational wealth kind of stuff, like life-changing money, you got to take it. Like you can't.
Yeah.
I don't know what they offer, but the word on the street is that Tech, they want to be big players, and they got sugar daddies that are willing to fund them, taking the step toward being a major player in this new day and age in college sports with revenue sharing and NIL. They believe they got the funds and the money to back them, and they do. It seems right now they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it's like what you told us, Coach, about SMU. You told us about that when we first started. Where you was like, no, SMU, they got the money and they don't care about getting the revenue from the television rights and all that for the first 9 years they're in there. It's like, no, they don't care about them. They don't need that. They don't need the conference revenue. They got old money, and they believe that old money in this current climate and current state of college sports, it can fund them. It can help them become a real player in college sports. And right now, that seems to be the case. And we'll talk about Oklahoma, who may not have as much old money and sugar daddies as some of the other programs. Jim Nagy's talking about taking a different approach to talent acquisition. Texas is trying to, I think, be in the middle. They want to be competitive in NIL and also, bring in guys for the right reasons. So they're not always offering the top dollar figure, I imagine. But Oklahoma, Jim Nagy's talking about doing something a little different. We'll talk about that, but he wants to copy the NFL model, but he wants to find value. And I always tell people all the time, the NFL is all about extracting value from every acquisition. It's what they're really thinking about. It's what they're being paid for. Every player should outperform their contract. Hard to do that when you're making 20, 30 million a year. You're probably not going to outperform that contract. So those guys are separate, right? Your quarterbacks and that elite edge rusher, elite tackle, they become separate because nobody's going to outperform a 20-something $1 million a year contract really hard. So where do you find the value? Lower end of the roster. The guy that's making the minimum salary, he's got to outperform the contract. You find an undrafted free agent that makes your roster that becomes a starter. Value. Boom. That makes up for a lot of money that you usually would have to pay a guy, a veteran, to take up that spot. And college sports is starting to, especially with a revenue sharing deal, they're going to be looking at a very similar methodology. Where do you find the value? You got to find value somewhere. You can't pay everybody what they're worth because everybody's not going to perform up to that pay scale. Everybody's not going to perform up to it. Then you're losing value. Then you're overpaying guys who's not performing up to the level that you need them to, or the level that you're expecting them to. So like I said, where do these GMs now find the value? And that's the interesting conversation that we're gonna talk about with Jim Nagy and what he's introducing in terms of their new philosophy at Oklahoma.
For Tech specifically here, it's not just getting a top guy in the state of Texas on the offensive line, right? Earning a trench recruit here. It's beating Texas. It's beating Ohio State. It's getting up to the plate and saying, okay, we can hit off, some of the top dogs in the country. And that's something that they've struggled with perhaps a little bit in high school recruiting. Obviously, we could talk about the portal and how aggressive they've been there. But I think for Texas Tech, they're looking at it in the sense of we can now recruit others at a different level on the in-state in 2026 by pointing to guys that we have in the fold and recruitments that we've won in this class by saying, yeah, it's a little bit different now. And will that be the case? We'll have to wait and see for tomorrow when Ojo ultimately makes his decision. But they're attacking this recruitment as if, there's a lot to prove, not just because of the individual recruitment, but beyond that, and kind of encapsulate its own program for the broader target and prospect in 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, it's fascinating. All right, getting back to A couple of questions here. How about this one from Blake? Says, are the rumors on Rouse true? If so, any effect on Atkinson?
No effect on Atkinson. They're completely separate recruitments. Texas wants to take 3 linebackers this year. Look, they just added one with Kosi Okpala. In a best world situation, you end up with Rouse, Atkinson, and Okpala. Will that be the case? We'll have to wait and see. But Texas moving in the right direction with a Braden Rouse, who previously was all in on Tennessee. Of course, you got to win over the family and the dad specifically in this one. Until that's the case, I still lean a little bit towards the Volunteers, but Texas certainly has made this tighter over the last 48 hours than I would have anticipated about 2 weeks ago.
All right. Thank you for the question. How about this one from Big Poke Sex? So if Ojo doesn't come to Texas, does that NIL money go towards Tyler Atkinson or Lamar Brown? Not sure how that works. No. I'm not sure how the allocation works out. Like, I don't know. That's a true behind the scenes question. Yeah. I mean, I guess it could theoretically.
Yeah, Lamar Brown has a decision, July 12th, I believe. I would be shocked if that's not for A&M. That's not to say he will sign with A&M, but for the time being, I don't think that anything's going to change from now in the 10 or 11 days until he ends up making his decision. Should he end up in Texas, that decision would come during the season, in which he gets back on campus, he sees a game, he's around Alan Clark once again. But for the time being, I don't think that is going to ultimately change where he's leaning in the next 10 days or so.
Kevin here says, is the OTF fam going to Columbus? I'm sure there's I don't even know the details, but I'm sure of it. No question. He says, Can us peasants tailgate with y'all? Of course. All right. You can tailgate and hang out with us. There's no doubt about that. Don't know details about that, but I'm sure those will be they'll be coming in probably right around SEC Media Days, somewhere around there. I'm sure Bobby and company will get that going. So thank you very much, Kevin. We will get some of those details. Matter of fact, I'll reach out and ask. All right, we'll get those details to you as soon as we can, because I know people like to make plans. But thank you very much. And yes, please come tailgate with the OTF fam. We appreciate that. All right, let's thank our first sponsor of the evening before we continue. Let's thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. Just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award for their vintage wine, Super Texan. The Super Texan not only was an award-winning wine here in Texas, locally and regionally, but recently they took it out to San Francisco. They took it to the San Francisco Wine Festival. They wanted to put it up against some of the best blends in all of the country. And turns out, guys, it got a 98 out of 100. It was named the top red blend in the country. And now they can claim not only is it one of the best red blends in Texas, but also one of the best red blends in all of the USA. So Super Texan, they have it at your local Specs. They have it at your local HEB. I saw a display at our local Central Market here in town. So the word is getting out about the great wines over at Flat Creek Estate Winery. But not only do they produce some of the best premium wines on the market, but also they have a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. Perfect for a date with your significant other, or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. I really appreciate them and their ongoing support of On Texas football and sponsoring the winning drive. All right, question here, CJ. What's the Brian Arakpo connection to Kosi Okpala?
I think he trained with them a little bit back in the day. Ball quickness off the line of scrimmage. Obviously, Arakpo, we know the lightning quick ability there. I think for Kosi, when training to play off the edge, he worked with Arakpo a little bit.
Okay, yeah. He said something about that, and they mentioned the Arakpo connection, that they were really close. So I don't want to throw it out there. Thanks, CJ. I appreciate that. All right, can I want to bring up this Jim Nagy thing real quick and the quote he had. He was on with the Triple Option, and they were talking about, his methodology and building the Oklahoma roster now as the GM. And he says, quote, he said, really here more than anything to help the coaching staff, and help build this roster and streamline the process. He said, everyone says they're trying to go to an NFL model. He said, we can evaluate the players. I have great belief in our new staff's ability to do that and find value. He said, but at the end of the day, you still have to recruit them. And then he goes on to talk about official visits and that kind of stuff. But he says, we've got a grading scale and we're going to stick to. He said, that's also going to dictate how we spend on players. He said, we might have the same grade on a 5-star and a 3-star guy. And if that 5-star is taking official visits to Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Texas A&M, that's a certain market, right? But if the same graded player is getting offers from group of 5 schools, we know which direction we'll probably go because we're looking for value. He said, if you look at NFL rosters and trace back to their high school days, that league is littered with 2- and 3-star players. They're out there. We just need to identify them and trust our evaluation. Now, he is right about the value element of it. I've been talking about it for years. And anybody I talk to that's worked in an NFL front office, that's how they build their philosophy and methodology. Like, how can I extract value from this, whatever transaction, whether it be acquiring talent, trading talent, whatever, cutting it, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how you apply that necessarily in this landscape with the revenue sharing and NIL, transfer portal and all that. But he is essentially he's saying they got their own grading system. Your 5 stars and all that don't matter to them. And they're going to find value because they're going to take the player who I guess is a lower rated player who has the same grade or a similar grade, because that player would be cheaper than taking the 5-star player with the same grade.
That's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I just want. I know. It might be smart because I don't know the numbers of how many 2- and 3-star guys. He knows. Jim Nagy definitely knows. He was former Senior Bowl executive, so he knows how many 2- and 3 stars and 4 stars and 5 stars are on NFL rosters from year to year. And I'm sure we can grab those numbers and do some research on it. I haven't done it yet, but he's essentially saying that, yeah, it's not necessarily worth it to pay for all the 5 stars, and the 4 stars if our grading system has them ranked the same as a 3-star.
That's where, and Texas has been really good at it recently. Geographically recruiting, where are you sending out a lot of your offers? Because you'll see a lot of the same physical tools throughout different places in the country. Yet you could see a wide receiver from Florida and a wide receiver from Oklahoma have the same or similar skill sets. And that wide receiver from Oklahoma, in theory, is going to have a significantly less or lower price tag than that one in Florida. I think the same for quarterbacks. Obviously, anything in Texas, you're going to hear about the Texas boost. You're going to hear about the competition and who they're playing against. I look at edge rushers in the DMV and North Carolina, South Carolina, that area. Texas extended a lot of offers in the winter this year. Those guys have been some of the best edge rushers in the last 3 or 4 years coming out of that area. Yet you don't hear a whole lot about them because, well, they'll commit early to Clemson. They'll end up at a South Carolina, a Maryland will snag a few, and that doesn't grab the headlines as those guys in Georgia, right? And that's where you start to look at kind of the reputation positionally across the country of what and where some of the highest price tags are in the country. So Texas has done a fine job in that. And I think that's one of the bigger things this cycle that we've been noticing is, hey, you're finding equivalent talent for a significantly lower price tag. And it's because of where you're going. And winning on the field previously is going to open more doors for you to be able to do that. That's one of the things I think has been really interesting this cycle specifically.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I think Texas is trying to find. This is because this may seem extreme to some that they'll take the 3-star guy, but has the same rating as a 5-star guy in their system. But I think he's gonna go all in, like on his philosophy, whatever it is. I think Texas is trying to find a little middle ground in between this and just making it rain. Just making it rain the biggest cash dollars and the biggest cash figures they can throw out for every top player that's out there. They just try to win and money whip every player. I don't think that's what they want to do. Coach, what are your thoughts? Because it's interesting because I think everybody's got to find their own lane in this new landscape of college sports. Everybody's not going to be able to do it the same because everybody ain't got the same resources, and everybody doesn't have the same, availability of talent and the resources and all that kind of stuff.
Well, with looking at a looming salary cap, I guess you could call it, it obviously makes sense to do this, because if it was just the amount of money that you could raise, period, then yeah, forget that. Go with all your 4- and 5-star guys like we've been doing. But now that you're not going to be able to get all those guys because you're not going to have the money available to outbid everybody, I think it's very wise to be doing that. What do you think? 4 guys a class, maybe something like that, maybe even 5.
Probably.
Depends on how many you sign. But look, everybody's wanting a Michael Taft. Is Michael Taft not a great value? Of course he is. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult to project a player like that who maybe doesn't have every measurable, which obviously Michael Taft didn't have. But we all know there's one thing you can't measure, and that's heart. And sometimes football savvy. It's not really, you can't just really put a clock watch on that or put a measuring tape on that. And so it takes a lot of evaluation, takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of visiting with high school coaches and not only their head coach, but opponent coaches. I think to find those nuggets that are out there. And I think you'll see everybody doing more of that. I'm sure Sark has people on his staff that are doing that, trying to find guys that are undervalued, that have the potential, like Michael Taft. I mean, nobody saw that coming. The guys, he's returning preseason first-team All-American, was a second-team All-American last year. Everybody wants value, but we have to come to the realization that in today's landscape of college football, where they're going to try to level the playing field a little bit, it is important to find those guys that maybe have been overlooked. And isn't that kind of what we do in the portal anyway? I mean, you're getting, you get, Tulsa and some of these other schools, they go out and they do a great job of evaluating talent, and they get guys and develop them, and then they can't keep them because maybe the Power 4 schools missed on him, or maybe he wasn't quite developed yet enough for them. But then you steal him, and now you're trying to find those same guys out of high school. Yeah. Not that the transfer portal still won't be important, but you still have to have those guys, in high school that you can kind of raise up into your own program, and then hope you can keep them as their monetary value will increase as they increase with their production on the field.
No,
because you can get a guy that's a value out of high school, but once he starts making noise on the field, you have to compensate him for that. Are you still going to be able to compensate him as his value rises?
And Coach, this is why ultimately at that point, and it's such a great point, you're a head coach thinking macro, that's why inevitably they're going to have a collective bargaining agreement or something, because you can't keep playing a guy every year. Every year that they perform, it's like, I got to pay them more money just to retain them. I got to up their salary just to retain them. I think more and more they're going to want to lock in a number on the guy so they'll know what they're worth. Because if not, then they just hit free agency, they hit the transfer portal. You can't pay them what they're worth. They're like, no, you can't pay me. All right, man. I had 3 more sacks this year than I had last year. I'm worth more money. Y'all can't pay me. I got another bidder over here. They wouldn't have paid me.
Yeah.
It more and more, I feel like there's going to be some type of collective bargaining because in the terms, I know you have revenue sharing in terms of like NIL, because NIL, in addition to the revenue sharing, if some team is really willing to allocate more resources to pay, a certain position, because they value that position. That's also something that we'll discuss later on. Open Doors revealed their basically their NIL collective numbers. They track NIL spending and NIL transactions across the country year to year, and they've been doing it since the infancy of it. And they actually broke it down by NIL spending by position in the major sports. And I thought it was pretty interesting, and I think it's something that would be a nice conversation to have. But anyway, I think what Oklahoma's doing is smart. It's risky, but it's a smart way to do it. I think coaches, right? I think you'll see maybe 3 guys, a recruiting class, maybe 3 to 4 per recruiting class. But that value, that savings will add up over time, especially if those guys develop into being, starters for you, NFL draftable players for you.
Yeah.
And so you'll have the proof of concept. All right, let's get back to some of the questions here. How about this one from Andy? Says, "Hey, right off topic, but I was wondering who all is projected to start in the secondary, and how good do you feel about that group?" Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. I do feel good about that group. I mean, we just talked about Michael Taft. Coach just brought him up. Michael Taft he is, to me, the kind of the stabilizing force right now in that secondary. I feel good that he will limit like a lot of your explosive plays and bad plays. He erases a lot of those things. He's been doing it since he started at Texas, even before his All-American season last year. Teaming him up with whenever Derek Williams comes back. I don't know when that's going to be. I assume it'll be sooner rather than later, CJ, but I don't know when that's expected. But when he's back, and he will be back at full strength at one point early in the season, and that's safety tandem along with Jelani McDonald, depending on what you want to do with him as a safety or a big nickel package, which is kind of with 3 safeties on the field. That will be one of the best safety rooms in the country. I mean, that's going to be phenomenal. Corner, Malik Muhammad, I do believe should be an all-conference caliber corner this year. If he's not, then, he didn't take the step I thought he would. He is capable of that, especially even in the SEC. He's got that kind of potential and upside. I think even we'll get into it later. Pro Football Focus has him as a top 50 player in the country. The question is, there's a hole in the secondary, because not a hole. I shouldn't say that. There's a question mark in the secondary, but is that question mark at the corner opposite Malik Muhammad, or is it at the nickel spot? Because if Gilbo is going to play corner, then I think the uncertainty and the question mark is at nickel. And you could put Jelani McDonald there and run a big nickel 3 safety package for a while, or situationally based on matchups. But you do need a coverage nickel, and maybe you can move Gilbo kind of back and forth depending on the matchup that week. But so I don't know which one they like more. Whoever the option is for nickel, or whoever the option is at the corner spot opposite Malik Muhammad. Is it Kobe Black, who has stepped up and earned the trust of the coaches? And they go, no, we trust him. And you got to figure this out by week 1. You got to face the best wide receiving room in the country. You got to figure it out by week 1. And I think they want veterans out there by then. So I'm leaning toward them putting Gilbo at corner early, just because of the Ohio State game. If it wasn't Ohio State week 1, I think they would, kind of naturally, organically let the secondary grow into, whatever its identity is this year. They don't really have that luxury. They got to come out ready to go. So I think right now they put Gilbert at corner, and I think early on, either they like who they have working at corner? Is it Wardell Mack? Who's they have working at corner? I mean, sorry, yeah. Nickel.
Wardell Mack, Jalen Gilbo,
yeah.
Some Jordan Johnson, Rubel spun down there.
Yeah. See,
they got some guys.
They got some guys. I'm not sure which one of those guys they trust more in the Ohio State game. Like I said, there's one question mark in the secondary, and I'm not sure about. And like I said, the issue is I don't know where it is. I don't know if it's at nickel or at the corner spot, depending on what they do with Gilbo and where they want Gilbo to be. But they got options either way. Like I think even Jelani McDonald in the big nickel package is an option for them situationally or based on the matchup. And what is Kobe Black doing? Cade Phillips. What is Santana Wilson? Like that. Those young corners, like how they stepped up. Warren Roberson already had a great spring too. It's another option at the cornerback spot. Obviously Malik Muhammad. So I just don't know how that's going to materialize, but they got to figure it out quickly. So. All right. Thanks, Andy. Appreciate the question. Getting back to super chat from Taylor says, if the players eventually become employees, as Jerry talks about, do you think we'll eventually see trading of players?
No. Ultimately, no. And I think it's one of those things that, yeah, I mean, I think there will be eventual cuts or outs for both the player and the school to get out of contracts financially when it comes to the future of college football. But you can't tell a kid, hey, you came to the university to go to school and play football. One, you can't play football here, but two, we're not going to value your education. You have to go somewhere else because we're bringing in another kid. I don't think that will ever be the case in college football, but hey, crazier things, maybe. I mean, there are crazy things in college football all the time. I just think it's very difficult to justify pointing a kid and his family in a direction of, hey, you can no longer study here at our institution. Football, that's one thing, but I don't think you can force a kid to go anywhere else to an institution or university without their consent, essentially. So no, I don't think that'll ever be the case.
Yeah.
The only way that would ever happen, which it will not, as you clearly stated, is if academics were optional. You know, going to class is optional. And then you go into what the guys were talking about on Coffee and Football this morning. Is there a point where you start drafting high school players? Well, that's ridiculous. You're not going to draft an 18-year-old guy and make him go to class. You know, it's ridiculous. But hey, who would have thought we'd be talking about who's offering Ojo the most money? 5 years ago, that would have been ridiculous for us to even fathom talking about that. So crazier things, I guess, have happened.
And Coach, that's actually a good point, because I've wondered where does the NFL kind of put its foot down and say, all right, enough of this paying high school kids. And I don't mean altogether, right? We're at the point now where kids will be paid from now until the end of time in college football. But you look at some of the top guys each cycle, and I say top in college football, but guys that would have filled up the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th undrafted rounds of the NFL draft who return because they're making more in college. When does it get to the point where the NFL says, okay, we need an influx of guys waiting to come into the league, waiting to bide their time and fight for roster spots? Was it 2 years ago, Rod, when we talked about the 2023 draft, I believe? And we had folks coming on the show saying this is as shallow a draft talent-wise as we've ever seen, because folks are trying to stay in school to be a 4th or 5th year guy that gets paid a lot of money. When does the NFL kind of put their finger on the scale and say, hold on, y'all have got to cut this out? Because to be quite frank, I mean, Jahdae Barron should have been in the NFL a year ago. And instead, Texas offers him something that's very competitive to that of a rookie contract that he would have earned in his 4th, 5th, or 6th round contract in the NFL. It comes back, he earns the Thorpe Award and a 1st-round pick. That's great, but at what point does the NFL say we're losing too many guys to this from the college level, and our talent influx suffers as a result? I wonder if we'll ever get to that. I think we will.
That's interesting.
I think it's just a matter of time until you have a lawsuit, because why can't the NFL do what Major League Baseball is doing? Why can't you use the same philosophy they use? You can draft a kid out of high school, and then what is it? When's the next time?
It's got to be 3 years removed. They
3 years. So
high school,
nobody likes the lawsuits, and I don't know why somebody hasn't filed a lawsuit yet to be able to allow high school kids to be drafted out of high school. It's almost discriminatory, I guess, in a way, that one sport can do it. Well, actually, basketball, I guess, can do it too, but football can't. I don't know if it's more of the physical part that it's so hard on the body, and you don't have a developmental league in the NFL like you do in baseball and basketball. Are we going to start seeing developmental football leagues for pro teams to kind of take away the whatever they call it now, the USFL or World? I don't know what they call it.
Yeah, they got a couple of them actually popping up. I think those spring leagues develop, but the XFL has a partnership with the NFL for, I believe, like experimental technology, and when they change rules and they want to experiment with new rules, they can do it via the XFL. But the NFL will not necessarily give their stamp of approval to any league as a developmental league. Coach, don't tell me I'll and then donate all my earnings to the NIL, Josh, he says. But number one, about the developmental league, college does too good of a job developing talent. It's just, and it's its own separate multi-billion-dollar arm of the sports industrial complex. So the NFL is like, nah, college, y'all are way too good. Y'all promote our players. Y'all promote the players for us. You market the players for. By the time it gets in the league, everybody knows who they are. That's why we have the draft. That's why the NFL has the draft. That's why the NFL markets the combine now. As you can watch, it's a 3-day, 4-day event because you know these players. Some people don't even like NFL football, but they will watch the draft and watch the combine because that's their guys from their school. I know a lot of Longhorn fans like, I don't like the NFL, but I watch the draft. I watch the draft. And I'll go watch my guys if my guys are going to play. So the NFL knows that. And to your point, CJ, about will the NFL ever put their foot down because it's affecting their talent acquisition or the flow of talent into their league? Maybe, but only when the NFL has to invest more guaranteed money in contracts. And right now they don't. So the NFL don't really care. Because they're like, we don't invest a lot of money in guaranteed contracts. The only real guaranteed money in the league is that signing bonus, and most of that is in first-round picks. It's cut in half by second-round picks. Go look at the NFL right now. You know a lot of second-round picks still hadn't signed. They're holding out. Because there ain't no guaranteed money in the second round. It's good, but your guaranteed money is cut in half. That's why a lot of good GMs, they love second-round picks. Because a lot of them have the same evaluation or grade. It's the same thing going back to Jim Nagy. Find value. Same grade as a first-round pick or some idiot GM in the NFL drafted some dude that should have been drafted in the second or the third round in the first round like an idiot. That guy fell to the second round. I get a first-round pick for half the guaranteed money. Howie Roseman, like those kind of guys, right? So that's why the NFL, they don't really care because they don't invest a lot of guaranteed money like the NFL, like Major League Baseball. You know why Major League Baseball is a developmental league? That's guaranteed damn money I paid that high school kid. You're damn right I own his rights. I own his rights. That's the difference. When they draft the kid, they give him guaranteed money, a lot of it. NFL don't give a lot of guaranteed money unless you're a first-round pick. That's it. Everybody else, they scrimping and scraping for that second contract so they can get more of their guaranteed money. And that's 75% of the league drafted outside of the first and the second rounds. That's why the NFL is the NFL.
Yeah,
that's why they're a straight up machine. They own to the next one. They're on to the next one. Unlike like the basketball model and baseball model. All right, let's get back to a couple of more questions here. How about this one from Tex-Mex Horn? Good afternoon, fellas. Are a lot of schools throwing around fake money? Pete Nakos tweeted about it yesterday. Are teams promising fake numbers or plan to pay under the table? Under the table. I guess you can still have, why wouldn't you? I imagine that still goes on under the table.
There will be a return of that. There will be an influx of under the table money, I'm sure, especially in the SEC. If schools who are used to doing it a certain way are told no longer you can do it this way, they'll find a way to make sure that the means in which they have been accustomed to recruiting are still met. Fake money is going to be interesting because I think you're going to be met with a lot of promises that aren't fulfilled, especially in the new age of revenue sharing. Now, does that mean your ultimate NIL deals are gone by the wayside? Probably not, but they're going to have to be cleared by the third-party clearinghouse. And if those don't go that way, but that money is still promised, well, how do you do that? To me, it's under the table. It's those handshakes. It's those McDonald's bags. It's, what did your mom and dad do? Can we help them in that regard? So I think fake money might be an interesting term, but ultimately it's where do these schools ultimately make up for the legality number that is reported and you hear all about versus what in recruiting is mentioned, and how do they bridge that gap? It's too early to tell right now.
Oh, I like this question from LL. He says, at this point, using NIL as an excuse is a moot point. Everyone is paying players. Who wouldn't take a larger salary?
Correct.
Coach? That's Let's apply it to our lives.
Plain and simple.
How often I will say there are times I consider the quality of life over a job offer. I've had job offers in Houston and in Dallas before for more money. I like Austin. And I decided to stay in Austin because I liked my situation, and then so there are times where now if it was a lot more money, I would have taken it. Now it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough money. So that may be it too. It wasn't enough money. So to LL's point, I don't know what the young people have been off. If it's enough money, coach, you have no choice but to take it.
Yeah, well, you're 40-something-year-old man, Rod. I mean, these are 18, 17-year-old kids, and I think LL makes a good point. There's a lot of them, especially if they don't have, and they still may have good guidance, who still pointing them to the money, because as you said, there's, other than a first round pick, there's nothing guaranteed. So the thing about it is, we can go down a rabbit hole real deep with this in terms of, I would sure like them to be, I would sure like there to be something in place that gives a player some money, but also almost like a trust fund. Where you don't get it until you're, the majority of it until you're 25, or, where you can a little more mature and know what to do with it, and know maybe how to invest it. Because right now, 17, 18-year-old getting millions of dollars, man, there's sharks swimming all around that dude, all around him. Everybody wants a piece of it, and it's hard on those guys. It really is. I mean, it's hard on guys that are still 22, 23 coming out of college. Because they still haven't been in real life yet, and they just see the dollar signs, and they have a family member or a trusted friend who wants to take care of the money for them, and next thing you know, they weren't mature enough to be able to see it. So I would love to see some type of trust fund set up for these guys when they're just a little bit older. Sure, have some money now, have a good time, live life, take care of your parents as you can, but it's how many guys wish they would have put some back? Been forced to. I wouldn't have put it back. I would have had to been forced to. It would have been the best thing for me.
Me too, coach. I could have really 24, 25-year-old Rod B could have really helped out 45-year-old Rod B.
Yeah, that's right.
If I put a couple of more dollars away, that'd be great. All right, before we move on, let's thank another one of our sponsors, our friends over at Von Lane. We appreciate them and all of their support and the ongoing support of Owen Texas football. Folks, if you're trying to get to any of the major cities in the great state of Texas, trying to get to Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, you need to check out our friends over at Von Lane, because we understand it's a bit of a toss-up. If you try to take a plane, obviously there are hassles associated with that. You got to deal with your flight being delayed. You got to deal with the airport chaos overall. It's just really stressful, right, these days, anytime you're dealing with airport travel. And then you can also try to drive it yourself, but that is a bit of a hassle as well. You got to deal with traffic and road rage. You lose an entire day of productivity while you're driving on the road. Well, the third option, folks, is better in each and every way. And the third option is Von Lane. Von Lane is great. I've taken it several times to Houston and Dallas on business and to visit family. You arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience that takes minutes, not hours. You settle into a plush leather seat, a hot towel, pillow, and blanket are at arm's reach. Your attendant offers complimentary snacks, beverages, and on select trips, a full meal. And if you need to relax, you can lean back and enjoy the ride. But if you want to stay productive, there's high-speed Wi-Fi and power at every seat. While you're unplugging or powering through, the Von Lane team will be monitoring traffic in real time, using smarter routes and efficient detours to keep your trip smooth and on schedule. And now is the perfect time to plan your fall travel. Booking is open through September, so whether you're headed to a college football game or a weekend getaway or a business trip that needs to be done right, Von Lane makes the journey part of the reward. Von Lane serves Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and in the Southeast, Atlanta, Nashville, and Memphis as well. Visit vonlane.com. That's VONLANE.com. Use the code OTF25 to save $20 off your first ride with Von Lane. That's Von Lane Elevated Regional Bus Transportation. Thank you very much to our friends over at Von Lane. All right. Oh, Splendid Daddy here says in the super chat, thank you for the super chat, Splendid Daddy. No more McDonald's bags. Use Bitcoin under the table. They definitely ain't caught up with that chat. So if you are paying one of these young people under the table and giving them hundreds of $1,000s in Bitcoin, Uncle Sam might catch up to you at one point, but NCAA will not. There ain't no damn way. There's no damn way that institution is set up to regulate that. No type of currency. No way.
Splendid Daddy, you may have a job on a staff somewhere soon.
Seriously, loophole. I think Splendid Daddy just found y'all's loophole right there. All right, that's good stuff. Okay, how about this one? Really quickly from Blake. He said, do you think we are recruiting light on tight end? Not only because Winston and Townsend, but also we could pivot Michael Terry if needed. Also haven't heard much about him this summer. Interesting question about tight ends. I don't know what Michael Terry's working at wide receiver right now.
Yep.
He wants to be a wide receiver, correct? That's I believe, right? Yeah, I mean, I think him going to tight end, it depends on how he transitions. Is he going because they're trying to add it as another dimension to his game because he mastered wide receiver for him and they want to use him as some movable chess piece? Or is it just because he didn't work out at wide receiver? Let's move him to tight end. Like, so it depends on the story, the narrative of the transition to me too. I'm hoping it's the former and not the latter.
Yeah. To answer the first question, no, Texas is not recruiting light on tight end. Look, Texas was all in on Mark Bowman. We talked about why that decision ended up going in the favor of USC. There are 7 big reasons why he ended up at USC, of course. Texas still awaiting decisions from Hezzy Kent, Texas, Georgia, Florida in the mix there, and Caden Prothro, Texas, Alabama, Georgia in the mix there. Georgia looking to take upwards of 3 tight ends in this cycle. That's really thrown a wrench in the Texas hunt for a tight end this year. And, of course, Keawe Brown out of Corona, California. Look, if worse comes to worse and you ends up – and I don't want to make it sound like this is worst case, but you miss on a Hezzy Kent and you miss on a Caden Prothro, 2 of the top 5 tight ends in the country, you're still with the solid base of Caden Prothro. And this is after a year in which you just added a Nick Townsend, Amari Winston, get 2 guys that we've both had very positive reviews in the last month since they've arrived on campus. But I think Texas is aiming high in tight end. Unfortunately, look, sometimes other schools put out big-time numbers at the tight end position. You're kind of put behind a rock and a hard place. So I think tight end will be fine. I think you're going into the 25 year with one of the more athletic tight end rooms Texas has ever had. And this is without a Michael Terry, who I think for the foreseeable future will be a wide receiver.
I think also that tight end is the transfer portal is a great way to pick up a tight end because there's not a lot of guys like Michael Terry that there are some obviously, but there's a lot of guys that certainly look like they're going to be a tight end when they grow into it, but they haven't quite developed into that yet because, a 6'5", 240-pound frame of a guy that can move and have the agility they need to have is not that common out of high school. But you give a guy a couple of years in college, I just think the transfer portal is a great backup plan to pick up a tight end if you miss on everybody one season, which I don't think we're going to miss on everybody this season. But I think the portal is a great place to pick up a tight end because they tend, of all positions, maybe offensive line. It takes a little more time to develop a collegiate offensive line. It's certainly, you rarely ever see a true freshman tight end come in and play, especially start, but you pick them up off the transfer portal like we did this year. I think it's a good gap stop for a year where you're aiming high and you strike out.
To your point, Coach, they haven't played a lot, but Sark has gotten with 3 out of the transfer portal. He got Nye Black. He got Jaleel Billingsley. Remember that dude back in the day? Right? And then he got Jack Williams. Yeah. So he's gotten him out. So he agrees. I think he does believe something similar to what you believe, Coach said. Now, it's a good play. That's a good position to target. They
don't always work out, but they can certainly help your scout team right away because they have the size and some experience a little bit, even though they may not immediately play on the field.
Yeah, speaking of tight ends, that's actually a nice segue. There was an article over at ESPN, and they were talking about basically under the radar players who could emerge in 2025. One of those at least for Texas, the under the radar player was Jack Andrews, actually. Um, yeah, he said for the Longhorns, they're under the radar breakout player is Jack Andrews. And I can believe that just based on Sark's number one tight end now. Just the production, the target share, just the utilization, the weaponization of Sark's tight ends. If you are his number one tight end, now I do think there's going to be a little bit more balance. I've been saying that in the target share, but at the tight end position. But if you're Sark's number one tight end, I mean, you're guaranteed a certain number of kind of targets and a certain amount, I think, of productivity that's been proven in the last 3 years under Sark. Now with two different tight ends.
I tend to agree. I think Jack Andrews this year, you have a floor of about 50 catches, 500 yards with this offense, the way that it's been that friendly to tight ends. We'll see. I think, again, how does Jordan Washington figure in when they go 12 personnel? You'll have a higher ceiling with two tight ends on the field this year in the passing game than maybe you've ever had, because I think there was some hesitancy to include a Gunnar Helm while you had Jatavian Sanders, just because you didn't quite know what Gunnar Helm would turn into while JT was there, and you really just trusted him to be the guy. But I think we're all pretty high on Nick Townsend, Amari Winston. Spencer Shannon had some moments in the spring, but I really look at Jordan Washington and Jack Andrews saying, yeah, you got two really talented guys at the tight end spot that can make a lot of noise this year.
Yep, no doubt. All right, I just wanted to throw that in there. I wanted to bring that up, and it felt like it was a perfect segue. So I appreciate that we're already talking about the tight end position. A couple of more questions here, and then I want to get to this top 50 ranking for Pro Football Focus and where they have some of the Longhorns ranked. But how about this one from Kobe? He says, one big question I have about some of these recruits is if you're committing because of money, what's the likelihood you'll transfer later for the same reason?
Flip a coin.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, look, I think all these recruits have opportunities to go to a place that values development, can get them into the NFL. You know, it's a 40-year decision, not a 4. But look, if you're going to the higher price tag, you know, it's kind of on you to find ways to succeed to fulfill that promise. And if you don't, well, odds are you're probably in the portal. But you know, what's the saying? You make your own bed. So, and this is not a shot at anybody. It's just the fact of the matter. We've seen it everywhere. Texas has had guys that transferred out after coming in, not necessarily living up to what was the expectation and wanting to go elsewhere to get on the field earlier. So, yeah, look, at the end of the day, NIL dollars and offers are going to be exactly that. It's hard to say no for a lot of these kids. So, it's all coming down to what they do whenever they get on campus and how ready they are at the beginning of their college career.
What I would like to know is, does anybody make less from one year to the next?
Like from year one to year two?
Does anybody have
That's a good question.
You know what I mean? Like, because I assume, obviously, you have a better year, you get upped a little bit, right? Or you go to transfer portal and you obviously are paid more via, I mean, that's obviously the free market, right? You're worth whatever the free market says you are. So I've heard the stories about guys getting upped and guys threatening to hit the portal and their way of negotiation. Like that's a common story now, and every program's got to deal with. Like Texas got a retention, right? Don't they got a retention specialist now on the staff? Literally, I'm assuming that's that guy's job. Guys who transfer to Florida State. Yeah, exactly. No, those guys. No, that's true though. When you hit the transfer portal and then you have to go down a level in competition, I'm assuming you're making less money because they have less money to pay. But I wonder, are you ever negotiated down?
Well, I wonder about guys that get in the doghouse.
Yeah,
like if and when word gets out on them, it's going to decrease their value. So say until you proven to us that you're going to learn from this and do right, we're going to dock you X amount.
Because these are year-to-year contracts, right? We're talking about just like scholarship, year-to-year thing. And I wonder if you go in there, you're like, yeah, I'm making my good. I was making 150,000. Going there, coach was like, nah, he's bumping you down to 75. Whoa, what's up with that? It's like, well, you ain't playing. I mean, I'm just curious. I want to know. I'd love to know how to negotiate. I got to ask one of the guys now. And I got to ask players back.
I'm sure that's a good way for the coaches to encourage someone to transfer, without cutting them.
Yeah, 100%, coach.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
That's a kind pack your bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, I was assumed that everybody has kind of a base whatever you started at, and then you just get increased. But that's a great point. If you want them out, just say we're gonna pay you 50% of what we paid you last year. I think some guys might hit the portal, and that may not always be a wise decision either, too. All right. Let's get back to a couple of questions, and then I'll dive into this Pro Football Focus ranking before we end things. Josh, he says, hey, Rod, Coach, and CJ, do you guys see Zena coming in to pass rush on a NASCAR package? Zena Umuyazulu. Ooh, man.
I would like it. I would like that a lot. But the old question goes to, who are you taking off the field? You're not taking Colin off the field. You're not taking Anthony Hill off the field. We know what Trey Moore can do. We know what Brad Spence can do from multiple linebacker positions. So, there are only really two edge positions on the field. I think you're going to leave a Rod Watson, perhaps, maybe an Alex January on the interior. And then what does a Ethan Burke or Colton Vossick give you? So in theory, yeah, I'd love to see him, because I think at 6'5", 255 pounds, he's got the perfect body to be disruptive with that length. But we're at the point now where it's, a few years ago, you're expecting those second-year guys to really make a splash in the lineup. Right now, I don't know if that's the case anymore.
Yeah, I don't know, because I like Vossick as a pure pass rusher too. He's really good as a disruptor. Ethan Burke is likely going to be the Baron Sorrell right edge that they bump inside. He's got the body for it, but I wonder if Vossick could bump inside too. But I never thought about Zena on that package.
My take on Vossick, when healthy, I think he's your second best pure pass rusher from the edge position on the roster. Obviously, Colin. But I think Vossick, not including Anthony Hill, because Rod, those numbers of him pass rushing win rates, I don't think anybody in the country matches that given the volume. But Colton Vossick at that length, at that size, with that twitch, I don't think anybody compares outside of Colin Simmons. But that's the big thing for him is, will he be on the field healthy enough to display that, essentially?
Yeah.
But he's my guy that I'm like, okay, when healthy, stud. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. The only issue, even if he just produces at the same level that he did last year, if he just plays more and extrapolate over time, he would have a great season. His havoc rate is through the roof, actually. All right, let's cover one more topic before we get out of here, guys. The top 50 players are being released. Top 50 is kind of a countdown they're doing. I think every day they're doing 10 players, and right now they've done 50 through 11, I believe. So they still have the top 10. I believe the top 10 is going to come out tomorrow. But the Longhorns, who are ranked in Pro Football Focus top 50, revealed Arch at 50. They have Malik Muhammad at 46. Michael Taft was revealed at 26. And they got Anthony Hill ranked in the latest ranking at number 14, the 14th best player in the country, according to Pro Football Focus, gentlemen. Guys that the Longhorns are playing that have been ranked on this list, just a heads up. Jake Slaughter at 11, the center from Florida. KJ Bolden, Georgia, the safeties at 42. Torian York, the linebacker from A&M, was at 29. Eli Stowers, the tight end from Vandy, is at 19 on this list. And they have Reed Adams, the guard from A&M. Actually, he was ranked at 16 on the list, as you can see. So, I mean, that's pretty high.
Who's left on our team that will be in the top 10?
Collins
could be in the top 10.
Colin Simmons,
right? Yeah, because Arch was what, like 20?
Yeah, he's 50.
Arch was 50.
Yeah, they put him at 50, which is actually, considering the hype, that's actually one of the more, at least, reasonable ones. Everybody else has got him as the, I mean, everybody else has got him as he's Heisman favorite, I believe, right now, Circa Sports and a couple other places. So, and I'm not saying he won't be that, but I don't know if that's where he should be preseason, if that's where the hype should be. But I'm with you. I think Colin Simmons only one. The players that, I think that Texas will play a couple of players that may be ranked in the top 10 too on this list. A few guys could end up being high because I haven't seen them yet on the list. I don't know if we've seen Lagway on the list yet. He might end up being really high on this list, and a couple other guys could be high. One guy, I don't know if he's going to be in the top 10, but I heard Greg McElroy, just real quick before we're done. He was talking to a I think a podcast in Oklahoma football podcast. And Greg McElroy said Cade Klubnik is the best quarterback in college football, which you agree with, CJ. You said that before too. You know what he said number 2 was? John Mateer.
Oh.
He said John Mateer, Oklahoma's quarterback, is the second best quarterback in college football.
He's going to be good.
And he said it's going to surprise everybody because really playing out at Washington State and all those late Pacific Coast time games, nobody's really seen him.
Mm-hmm. Now, he's right. He's right, man. I'm telling you, he's got some nasty. He's got a nasty game. His game is just it's nasty. He's toolsy. And he plays with a lot of swagger and grit. I like his game. I like watching the film on him. I started watching a little bit and ended up watching a lot of it because I ended up liking what I saw out of him. And I think now the word is getting out. We shall see if he's that good at Oklahoma. All right. Let's thank our last sponsor of the evening, our friends over at South Point Dodge, before we get done. Thank you to our friends at South Point Dodge. You can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has 100 vehicles in stock right now, including the all-new 2025 Ram 1500. Get the real deal today and drive away in the all-new Ram 1500, proven to last. Plus, right now, at South Point Dodge, you get employee incentive pricing. That's the fancy way of saying you get the employee discount. You pay what the employees pay right now at South Point Dodge. You won't find a better deal than that. That's the real deal at southpointdodge.com. You can go see them in person off of I-35 in South Austin, or you can go online, make it easy on yourself, and go to southpointdodge.com. You can check out their fantastic inventory there as well. Don't forget the employee discount you get at South Point Dodge, the employee incentive pricing. You won't get that anywhere else. So thank you to our friends at South Point Dodge for sponsoring the winning drive. Go check them out at southpointdodge.com. All right. Thank you very much to Matthew behind the scenes. He's a real MVP, twisting and tweaking it out. Congratulations to Kosi Okpala, the latest commitment in the 2026 class. If you did not hear or watch that interview that he did with Bobby Burton and Jeff Howe earlier today, like right after he made the announcement, shout out to Jerry Hamilton because he was boots on the ground down there as well, giving us a lot of great nuggets. Please go check that out. You would do yourself a great favor doing that. Also, do yourself a favor and use the code OTFOG. If you want to be a full-time member of the On Texas Football family, go to ontexasfootball.com. Use that code you see right there on your screen, OTFOG. You'll get a year subscription to ontexasfootball.com for just $39.95. We talk about a lot on the YouTube platform. It is a fraction, a minuscule fraction of what is actually covered there on the site with all the great work from Bobby and Jerry and Jeff and CJ. Blake Monroe doing a great job over there too. So go check that out and use that code OTFOG. And you'll get hooked up. Thank you, Matthew, for hooking us up. You're the best in the business. Thank you, Coach, for all the wisdom and the levity. Thank you as well, CJ. Thank you for the nuggets, all the great knowledge that you bring to the table. And thank all of you out there for the super chats and the questions and comments and participation. If we missed any of your questions, we apologize about that. Happy 4th of July. If we don't talk to you, I'm sure we will. But happy early 4th to everybody out there. Please enjoy your holiday weekend. And for CJ and for Coach and for Matthew, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis. Until next time, hook 'em horns.